winding down to the last two mysteries. We're studying the seven mysteries, and we covered last week the mystery of iniquity. And just as that one is a counterfeit of the real thing, this one also is going to be a counterfeit. And we're looking at Mystery Babylon the Great. First, let me read the passage where it says, Let a man so account of us as of the ministers of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful, and that it's not just an obligation, it's my duty to make these mysteries known, and that we have a full understanding of it. And we've looked at the things that they guard against. Each mystery guards against certain things that creeps into the church and contaminates it, indoctrinates it. And these things, there's seven of them, and those seven, if they're taught properly, will insulate the church from false doctrine and sin and stop you from following the devil. We saw last week how the mystery of iniquity counterfeited Christ's first coming, it counterfeited the church age, and it counterfeits the second coming. Now it's in mystery form. The mystery of iniquity doth already work. And the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. So that thing's going on right now. And sooner or later he'll be made, there'll be a physical manifestation. We saw that Judas Iscariot is the son of perdition, the mystery of iniquity. As the mystery of godliness is God manifest in the flesh, the mystery of iniquity is Satan manifest in the flesh. Christ is born, Judas is born. With the name Judas after the tribe of Judah, because a lawgiver, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet. It's a duplication as you come all the way through. It's just a duplication of everything. When Jesus departs, Judas departs. Now, the work of the Holy Spirit in this age, the work of the mystery of iniquity, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. What's coming up? Christ is going to come from the sky, and if I was a betting man, I bet you that the Antichrist will come from the sky too. There will be another physical manifestation. So everything is about a counterfeit. And a lot of people are fooled by counterfeits. Unless you know the real thing, you can't spot a counterfeit. That's right. So you study the real thing, and then the Lord shows you. And the Bible says that, that there must be heresies among you. We looked at this last week, or in Wednesday night study, that there must be heresies among you, that they that teach the truth might be made manifest. I think that's my version of it, not exactly the quote. But God, what happens is when you see something, it provokes men to go to the Bible and study it and find out the truth, to expose the error. The Holy Spirit tells you something's not right. And we'll see that. In Revelation chapter 17, and there are two chapters that deal with this. Revelation 17 to 18 that deal with Mystery Babylon. Now, I'll give you a little something here. I saw it this morning. The conception of this religion is not in Revelation 17 to 18. It's all the way back in the Old Testament, in Judges 17 and 18. So if you want to think about this as a whole, if you want to go and read about where it's conceived and where it begins, it's Judges 17 and 18. Where it ends is Revelation 17 and 18. So if that helps you remember it, it helps me, I think. In Revelation 17, verse 3 to 5, it says, And there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, and I will show thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. So the Lord's not mincing words here. It says she's a great whore. That's what I'll call her. That's what she is. With whom the kings of the earth had committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth had been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away into the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So there we have Mystery Babylon the Great. All caps there. We'll talk about that just a little bit. So just as we have a counterfeit of the mystery iniquity, we have a counterfeit here too. This is going to be the counterfeit of a church, of a bride, and of a city. Exactly as we studied about the mystery of the church. We studied about the mystery of Christ in you. Of course, that has probably more to do with the mystery of iniquity there, but we studied about the mystery of the church, and this thing is going to be a counterfeit. Good enough to fool a fifth of the world's population. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 12 and 13, or 12 to 15, it says, But what I do, that I will do, that I may cut off occasion from them which desire occasion, that wherein they glory, they may be found even as we. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. So you're told that they're going to be a counterfeit. I mean, he's just telling you that they're going to look like the real thing, but they're a counterfeit. Revelation in 17 and 18 clearly defined this counterfeit. It clearly defined who she is. And it is amazing how many, I don't know what to call them, Protestants. I'm not sure I can call them saved brethren. They might be saved, I'm sure. But they're backing off of this thing. I'll tell you who I saw back off of it. And I have a lot of respect for Jack Van Impe. Man memorized the Bible. How can you not respect a man that memorized the Bible? But he started backing off of this thing some years back. Now, Billy Graham, he completely backed off of it. But Jack Van Impe's backed off this, and he calls it, this church, this Mystery Babylon, a rogue branch of the Catholic Church. Rogue branch? The whole thing's rogue. Anyway, they're backing off of it because of the heat they get. Okay? But the Lord wants you to know exactly who this is. I mean, he spells it out so clear on how you can miss it. In Revelation, in verse 4 we just read, it says the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. So you're told there that, well, that we know the colors are purple and scarlet. That tells me a lot. What do I do with that? You know what that's a picture of? Bunch of cardinals. You know what you see? You know what you see there? And I hope I got the colors that are distinct. You see purple and scarlet. Because that's their colors, besides black. Purple and scarlet. In Matthew 27:28, and they stripped him and put on him a scarlet robe. In Luke 23:11, it says, and Herod with his men of war set him at naught and mocked him and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him again to Pilate. John 19:2 says, and the soldiers planted a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put on him a purple robe. Now, what is it with the King James? Is it purple or is it scarlet? It's both. It's purple on one side, scarlet on the other. Or it's half and half. But it is a purple and scarlet gorgeous robe. John 19:5, and then came Jesus forth wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, and Pilate saith unto him, behold the man. In other words, they have platted this crown of thorns on his head and then put this robe on him and probably put some scepter in his hand, and they're all bowing, they're mocking him. So this is how the world is. You know what they do? They come out with a movie called The Robe. How many of you remember that thing? Somebody ain't old enough. Okay. 1953. Richard Burton was in it. And this is where they really pushed the Roman Catholic relics, you know. It's not the man on the cross, it's a stinking robe. It wasn't his robe. It was their robe that they used to mock him with. Yep, they got to make this movie. And this robe, you know, all through the movie, this robe has some type of supernatural abilities. Of course, you know, I've got a book here. It's called Roman Catholicism. It is probably the best book on Roman Catholicism I've ever read. Now, I've not read all of it. But, I mean, it is very doctrinal, goes into where all these things came from. And it talks about these indulgences. And I believe this are indulgences and relics. And I believe this is the book that told me at one point in Europe there were 2 heads of John the Baptist floating around. And I think it was Dr. Ruckman that made the joke that one of them was when he was a teenager, you know, that kind of thing. But they had it talks about the pieces of the cross. He said there's enough to have a lumber yard. You know, they've got so many pieces of the cross and baby teeth. You know, you could outfit a shark. You know, and with dentures, with all the baby teeth they've found of Jesus and of Mary. You know, and they even said they had breast milk of Mary. You know, just the craziest stuff. But you know, and wherever they can get away with this, they're still doing it. You know, in America, you probably wouldn't get away with it so much. They say they sell medals and saints and scapulas and all kinds of nonsense. But in other parts of the world that are heavily Catholic, they can get away with still selling this stuff, and they do it. And but the purple and scarlet robe, that wasn't his. That belonged to the people that put it on him. Mystery Babylon. Same folks. Same colors, by the way, then versus now. Same colors. Well, I guess I brought this book for a reason. This was written and revised in 1968. A report in the Kansas City Star, September 21st, 1959, said that the Holy Robe of Christ in a glass enclosed case was displayed for the first time in 26 years in the cathedral at Trier, Germany. Trier, Germany. The oldest cathedral in Germany, that during the 2 months of its public viewing, it drew 1,800,000 pilgrims. And that the final display was attended by more than 35,600 people. Even some high-ups from the Vatican were there. I mean, that's how recent. I mean, it's 1959, man. They're still parading around stuff in Europe, and people are still looking at it. Oh, yeah. As he always said to the Pope, your hellishness. You couldn't do that today. You'd be a bigot. Let's look at this. It says about that her colors are purple and scarlet and her symbol's a golden cup. That ought to be enough information right there for you to figure out who it is. But then it says in Revelation 17:18, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. You might have to do just a little thinking about who that is and who has influence over the... I mean, all you got to do is watch Fox News and you know who has influence over the kings of the earth. I call that the pro-Catholic conservative channel. Because they always, whenever they're talking about the Vatican or the Pope, they're always talking in high praise. You know, every now and then they give them a little grief, but it's because they deserve it. But there is this Mystery Babylon. This is something that it's a city, but it's a people, it's a religion, It's a bride. It's all kinds of things. And it reigneth over the kings of the earth. We think that when the Pope sits up there on his throne, that, and he's talking peace, 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 that behind the scenes, he's working war. You know that a good portion of the popes that end up coming to that office, they're either a part of the Holy Office, which this one is, which, by the way, is the Holy Office of the Inquisition. That's the Pope we got now. But previous, like Pacelli, who was the Pope Pius XII, I believe, that was Hitler's Pope. He was a lawyer. I can't think of a worse choice for supposed to be a godly position in the world than a lawyer. Can you? That's what he was. But they influence, and if you think they don't have influence over America, then how is it we wind up over in a war somewhere, and we're thinking, how did we really get there? How in the world did this happen? Well, somebody gave us our marching orders. And I'll bet you there's some verses we'll look at here in a minute, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So it says she's a great city. It says there in Revelation 17:9, and here is the mind that hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And unless that's Cincinnati, which it's not, close, if you've been to Cincinnati lately. But I can only think of one city that sits on 7 mountains. And we refer to that as the 7 hills of Rome. I mean, the Lord did everything but write it down for you. Spell it out. What's interesting is that Christ's bride, the church, is identified with a city in the future. In Revelation chapter 21, verse 9 to 12, and there came unto me one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials full of the 7 last plagues, and talked with me, saying, Come hither, and I will show thee the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain. Oh, it's elevated. And showed me that great city, that's what he called the other one, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, and her light was like unto a stone most precious. That one has precious stones and gold, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. And then I think of the verse over in Galatians 4:26, but Jerusalem which is above is free and the mother of us all. And we call it the mother church, or they call it the mother church. You see the duplication? The church consists of people, and that too. But we're connected to a city, not yet here, but one day will be. They're connected with the city. A great city, it says. One that's decked with precious stones. You see how the counterfeit just keeps coming along? And since they're amillennial in their theology, and they don't believe that Christ is coming back, they got to have their city now. I mean, it just fits. And the whole world, they just think, when they think of the church, they think of the Catholic Church. They consider us some bastard child of the Catholic Church. At least Protestants. Baptists aren't. Baptists never came out of the Catholic Church. We came under it. We came through it and emerged on the other side. Let's see where I'm at here. So we have a great city, a city that is elevated. It's on 7 hills or 7 mountains. A city that is decked out in precious stones. A city that is home to a bride. Bride of Satan, but a home to a bride, which is a church, which is the mother of them all. I mean, there you got it, man. And this thing just, there had to be some thought put into this. There had to be, the devil had to plan this thing out, man. It started all the way back in the Old Testament and came right on through. He probably could have changed it from a church to something else, determined on what the Lord was going to do. He has to wait and see what the Lord's going to do. But he turns it into a church. In Revelation 17:5, her title is given. And you'll find it in all caps. If you don't, you need to change your Bible. But you'll find it in all caps. Okay, and there are 13 words in that title. And there are 65 letters, which is 5 times 13. Just like Judas Iscariot, just like the mystery of iniquity comes up 13, so does this whore. She comes up 13. And you're given an immense amount. You're dedicated 2 chapters so that you know who she is. And so that you stay away from her. It said the city is the habitation of devils in Revelation 18:2. And he cried, New Jerusalem will be full of angels and this city's full of devils. Makes sense. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen to become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Somebody said, would you ever like to visit Rome? Not after reading that. I don't want to go. I'm afraid I might have to, No wonder they got exorcisms over there. It's a good place to pick up something you don't want to bring home. And I'm not talking about a disease neither. Cardinals, that's good. Very good. Lord had to know all that. He knew all that. It says about this city that it sits on 3 things. Let's go through the chapter and notice it. Oh, it sits on that, sits on that, it sits on 3 things. In 17:1, it says, the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Then it defines for you what that is in verse 15 of chapter 17. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. That's kind of like the description of the United Nations back there in Joel 2. See, we think we know who's pulling the strings, but we really don't. At least it's not that evident. Timothy and I were talking about some things a while back, and I said, I've got an article, and I made a copy of it and gave it to him. I should have brought the copy here today. And it's about Joseph Kennedy. That's John F. Kennedy's dad, who made all his money bootlegging, and by the way, had strong ties to the Vatican. He had actually written letters to the Vatican that if his son became president, that he wanted to be the liaison between the Vatican and John F. Kennedy. And back in that time, back in that day, the fact that he was a Roman Catholic was of great concern to this country and still should be of great concern. Because where is his allegiance? To the Constitution of the United States or to the Pope? Yeah. And that was a big question. Had they known these letters existed, these letters that Joseph had written to the Vatican, that he wanted to be the liaison between the President of the United States and the Vatican, he never would have been elected. I was reading this morning in this book that when Nixon and Kennedy, I guess Nixon ran against Kennedy. That's starting to get back there where my mind's kind of fuzzy. But what they did was they would call anyone that wasn't willing to vote for John F. Kennedy a bigot. You were a bigot if you weren't willing to vote for him because he was Roman Catholic. We got the same thing going on today, man, just using different things, whether it's race or creed, or they're always doing something to intimidate people to do the wrong thing. Now, I don't know what happened when he got in there. I heard he really let down the Pope. I'm thinking to myself, why would a guy go after the mob? They're Italians and Sicilians. They pay tithes. They pay tithes to a church. And they need absolution, Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I whacked 10 guys today. Well, yeah. I mean, you got to get that thing forgiven, man, That's right. Just do a couple Hail Marys and, give that guy a set of beads that's about this long, But, except for a few Jews that were mobsters, but almost all of them mobsters were Roman Catholic. Didn't he get the memo? He must not have. And then after John started to go after him, then Robert went after him. Both of them wind up dead. Yeah. Now, okay. You got a better answer? Go on. Somebody look into Jack Ruby. I'll bet you Jack Ruby was Roman Catholic. Bet you check into that. I mean, he owned a bar. He was a strip club. That sounds Roman Catholic. Anyway, moving on.
Chase that rabbit.
Yeah. It just keeps getting deeper and deeper, though. It's going down the rabbit hole. 7 mountains. And she not only sitteth on many waters, and that's those nations and peoples and multitudes, but she sits on 7 mountains known as the 7 hills of Rome. And then she sits on a scarlet-colored beast. Now let's look at the description of this in verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And then Revelation 12:3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns. Isn't that interesting? And 7 crowns upon his heads. She's riding the devil, man.
What was that last reference?
That's a Revelation 12:3. You know, we think about church history, and if you study, just about any book you pick up, except for the exception of Dr. Ruckman's books, they're always going to bring in the Catholic Church. That's not part of our church history. In fact, we're told, come out from among you, be separate, saith the Lord, touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. We're told to come out of her. Anybody, listen, you don't leave any converts in the Catholic Church. You do your best to get them out. You're commanded to get them out. That's not the church. That's somebody else's church. That's somebody else's bride. And we're to get them out of there. You know, I'll tell you what, we think the enemy, back in the, I'll say 70s, because I wasn't, before 77, I wasn't thinking about anything, I don't think I had a decent thought. But after I got saved, but 70s, 80s, what we worry about? The commies. The communists are gonna take down the United States and the church and all this stuff. And now we're worried about the Muslims and ISIS. And all the while, he tells you, keep your eye on that whore. Keep your eye on her. That's where it's coming from. Sure enough, man, she'll be standing when the Muslims are bowing. I don't care if there are 1.4, 1.5 billion of them. There are about that many Catholics around the globe too. But she's the one you got to watch out for. In fact, there's some information, and I don't know how true it is. I can't figure that stuff out, but supposedly the Muslims got their start from the Catholics. There's a lot of things that are similar about them. Okay? I wouldn't be surprised. And isn't it funny that in just about any communist country, there's still an Orthodox church, which is nothing more than another branch of the Catholic Church. Yeah. How is it that they can dwell? I mean, they still have the church there. It just seems like that whore can get along with just about anybody. And if you have a particular God that you don't want to give up, then we'll just incorporate it. Yeah, we assimilate it. They did that with the Druids. That's why Mary's got more names than,
Female goddess in Mexico.
Is that Guadalupe? Yeah. They adopted just about anything, man. So if you want to keep your gods, no problem. That's what the missionaries did. It's how they go in and establish Catholicism in another country. They don't win them. They join them. Okay, moving on here. So that scarlet-colored beast, she rides him. I don't want to be a part of no church that's sitting on the devil's back, do you? Unless you're beating him and clawing at him and kicking him. Revelation 18, verse 12 and 13. And I'm going to read that for the length of time here, but it says, it tells you what she loves. What's interesting is gold is the first thing on the list. She loves gold. And the last thing on the list are the souls of men. So I think that kind of pegs what her affections are. She masquerades as the church of this age. She's deceiving about a fifth of the population. She is the chief enemy of the Christian on this earth. And I mean the chief. All the others are small pickings compared to her. And if you don't keep your eye on her, the next thing you know, she'll have you on the rack. In Revelation 17, verse 6, you're told this, and I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. He just cannot believe that. And I think what John's telling you is that when he sees Rome, remember, he's dealing with Rome. They're the ones that have, what's the word, to the Isle of Patmos. They kicked him out, exiled. He's exiled on the Isle of Patmos by Rome. But when he sees Rome, he's ushered 2,000 years in the future. He's just amazed at what he sees. It went from some military might with the colors of purple and scarlet and a golden cup, but it was a military might that covered what? 3 continents. Now all of a sudden he's moved to, it's 104 acres, man. And it's still running the kings of the earth. It still has the same colors and the same cup, and it's still killing Christians around the globe.
The names have been changed.
The guilty. Absolutely. Revelation 18:24. I'm not sure what this thing means. But it says, and in her was found the blood of the prophets. That may carry you back to the Old Testament. Listen, when they started worshiping Baal and Ashtaroth, 2 key players, that's what you have. So how do I know that? Because Herod is not going to kill Peter because of a holiday, a holy day coming up for the Romans called Easter, which anyone should be able to see, and this book says also, is a transliteration of the word Ishtar, or Ashtaroth. All they did was change, they got the same 2 deities. They got Baal and Ashtaroth, and all they did was call them Jesus and Mary. The same paganism is still going on. If we don't take heed to this mystery, we become infiltrated by that stuff. We become leavened. And a little leaven. I'll ask a few questions. Who scourged Jesus and beat a crown of thorns on his head? Who put the purple and scarlet robe on him? Who pulled out his beard, spit on his face, and nailed him to a cross? Who parted his garments and pierced his side? Who beheaded John the Baptist? Who killed James with a sword? Who arrested Peter and scheduled his execution? Who arrested Paul and eventually executed him? Who banished and eventually executed John to the Isle of Patmos? Who murdered millions of Christians during the Dark Ages? Millions. Who tried to murder King James and the translators to stop the translation of the King James Bible? It wasn't the commies. It wasn't the Muslims. You know, Revelation 18:20. Revelation 18:20, and I got to finish up. The Lord feels so strongly, hates that horse so much. Look what he tells you. Revelation 18:20. He says, now this is when she's destroyed. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. Now, understanding this mystery identifies that true church history has nothing to do with the Catholic Church, because we're commanded to come out of her. And even though there may have been some good men that didn't come out of her, that was their mistake, period. Because it says come out of her. It guards against ecumenicism. We are told to be completely separation from that kind of thing. It guards against accepting tradition as equal with the Scriptures, because that's exactly what they do. You see, when you accept the thing, when you see the thing, then you see not what not to do. It guards against amillennialism. And that's teaching that Jesus is not coming back, but the church is bringing in the kingdom. Well, we know what that church brings in. It brings death. As any kingdom building, whether it be communism, whether it be Islam, whether it be Catholicism, those are all kingdom builders, and they will all kill you if they get the opportunity. It guards against Nicolaitanism. That is, that the clergy over the laity, which thing God hates, the Bible says. That is their doctrine. They not only preach it, but they practice it. Why? They think that Pope should be running the world. That he is the substitute Christ on the earth, and that all the nations should bow to him. They haven't changed that. They haven't modernized it. They haven't tried to redact it. That's it. That's what they believe, and that's what they're pressing toward. You know, that Pope and this president are like water and oil. They are not going to mix. Trump is bringing back nationalism, and that Pope believes in one worldism. That Pope believes in a two-tier system where you got your peasants and you got your elite. That's just the way it is. The church is the elite, the peasants are everybody else. That's the same way with communism, fascism, two-party system. In America, we have three-party system. It's got to defeat that first. I'm not sure what's going on, but I do know this, and I'll tell you this. We are a country more divided than we've ever been. Right? Yes, sir. And a kingdom divided itself what? Okay. So there may be a little logic to this madness, method to this madness that's going on. I don't know. But I'm going to enjoy the ride as long as I can.
Yes, sir.
Thank God for it. Amen. We'll take the opportunity to preach and do what we can. Support missions. While the economy's good, better do something for the Lord while you can.
Yes, sir.
You know it ain't going to last. Never going to last. The Bible tells you it'll wax worse and worse. Perilous times shall come. I mean, just believe the Scriptures. But you know what else this does? This mystery, when you understand this mystery, it guards a nation from making any alliance with Rome. Had we had a nation that believed this book, we'd never make any alliance with Rome. But that's not the case. One thing that, and I loved Reagan. In fact, I was a part of the Republican task force. That's the only time I ever really got involved in politics, because I really did love the man. He sent an ambassador to Rome. That's the only thing that just, that really, the only mistake that I think, a big mistake the guy really made was sending an ambassador to Rome. You hate to see that kind of thing. But now look how entrenched Rome is. Maybe you don't see it, but just kind of read between the lines. Kind of think about what's going on. When we do something that's totally out of character for our nation, what happened there? Why did we do that? And I think that Rome is controlling the nations as best she can. Let's put it that way. But no matter what, this thing is going toward one direction. Okay? It is going toward one worldism. It is going to one religion, and she is going to be that religion. You cannot stop it because God is going to allow it to happen. He will make it happen. Why? That's what this world wants. And He is going to give them what He wants. Thank God He's getting us out of here. They can have it then. I don't care what they do with it. But get me out of here. Amen? Okay. Yes, sir.
When was Kennedy elected?
60? Yep.
And he died.
63?
Right. November 27th.
And then
1 year later, they take the Bible out of the school system.
Yep. Yes.
I'd just like to say, as a former staunch Catholic, we were taught the vows that the priests took when they got into the priesthood, and one of them was a vow of poverty. And you read all of the gold and the chalices and the encrusted diamonds, and another vow is chastity.
Yeah.
And boy, have they blown that.
Oh, yeah.
Millstone, it says a millstone will be, if you offend a child.
Yes.
And then there in verse 21, it says, and the mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone.
Oh, good point.
And I just thought, they can't get away with it.
Yeah. Yep.
It's horrible.
The very fabric of that church is it reeks.
It does.
You know, pedophilia and you get the homosexuality. There are so many books out there about how they've used the confessional. Now think about this. If we got a Catholic president that goes into a confessional, you say, well, yeah, it's his personal business. So yeah, but his personal business to someone that can blackmail him? All kinds of evil. I tell folks, I said, you want to talk to me, that's fine. I'll be glad to counsel with you if that's what you really want. But you need to tell him, not me. You need to tell him.
All the prophecies dealing with the tribulation, it only mentions two classes of people, rich and poor. Two classes,
Yep. Middle class is gone.
gone.
And by the way, your constitution to Rome, they've badmouthed our constitution from the get-go. Why? It doesn't fit their church.
You were doing the comparisons, and you wrote down in New Jerusalem, the comparisons of the cities. You had down verse 12 too, where you're going to bring up the Great Wall, the comparison of the Great Wall around New Jerusalem versus at Rome. You didn't read that verse, but you gave us the reference on it.
Now, I never thought even give that a thought, to be honest with you.
I didn't
That's
either,
good.
because I was reading that after when you said go to verse 12. I was assuming that's probably what it was, the Great Wall comparison.
It matches. It's a walled city. Yeah. And by the way, the reason the Pope, yes, sir. Go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish that thought.
Well, I was going to tell you the reason why the Pope's all for all these immigrants coming across the fence is they're all Roman Catholic. So, and it's a voting block coming across. Do you understand that? And if he wants to one of these days take over America, guess what? He's working toward it. Yes, sir.
I went to New York City years ago, first time preaching over there, and a preacher took us into St. Patrick's Cathedral there on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. Unlike her, I was raised in a Methodist church. I didn't know much about it, and we're in this fabulous cathedral. I mean, ceilings are 60 feet high, and all the candles. There's a gift shop selling, not a bookstore, selling all the little, what do you call them, the little saints and everything. So all the things that I learned and studied about in Bible Institute, I'm seeing. And the preacher that I was with said these massive doors that are solid bronze, 12 feet high, open up, double doors, were all donated by John Gotti. That was his way.
Yeah.
They were his way of making up for some of his sins. But the thing that stuck out, and I want to say, is up in the ceiling, up high above the pews are these flags. And the preacher said, "You see that flag right there?" And that was the Vatican flag. He says, push comes to shove, every Catholic is obligated to have their allegiance to that flag, not the American flag.
Right.
At the end of the day, their allegiance, just like you said, whether it's president or general, is to Rome,
Yes.
and not the country.
Yes.
That's scary.
That is scary. You just don't know when he's going to start barking out orders. Listen, if he ever sits in that throne, when he sits in his throne, he talks about the word ex cathedra, it means speaking out of the chair. Now, he hasn't done this I don't think he's done it for decades. But when a pope sits in that throne and when he ushers, what he says is infallible, according to him, according to them. So what happens when he starts issuing orders? And they have to believe, every Catholic has to believe that ex cathedra, that when he's speaking out of that chair, out of that throne, he is speaking infallibly.
Voice of God.
The voice of God. Man alive. So you better hold on to that mystery. You might want to share it with some other brethren. Because they think it's okay, you know, oh, that's okay, they're okay, you know, I'm okay, you're okay. No, they're not okay. According to this, they're the enemy. And they're guilty of the blood of the martyrs of Jesus Christ. Okay, we got to stop. 5, anybody else got a question or comment? Yes, ma'am.
Well, it's a question for,
Oh,
isn't the Red Hat Society Catholic? I don't know, I think it is.
The women thing?
Red Hat is the, and I looked it up, and I think the head of it is called a queen.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that is or not.
I think it is, because I was looking it up, because our neighbor invited us to a party, and she had this poem, and I'm like, it's the Red Hat.
If you knew how many holidays were Roman Catholic, you would just, yeah.
It's
Merry
every,
Christmas.
Yeah, thank you. Happy Easter. Yeah, happy birthday, yeah. All right, let's dismiss here. And about 5 after the hour, we'll start our main service.